presentation. I uploaded a PDF of this presentation, and I also uploaded a list of resources related to citizenship education. Some of them refer to organizations. Some of them are online classes. Some of them are resources for PDF for the N400 and for civics participation. To tell you a little bit about myself, I do teach at Milpitas Adult School. We do have teach levels of ESL from level 1 to intermediate advanced. We have a transitions class, and we have one citizenship class. We teach it 2 times a week for 3 hours at each session. During COVID, we were able to transition very quickly to Zoom because I've been maintaining a blog about citizenship resources since 2007. So the students naturally knew that they were supposed to go to that blog to check for their assignments. However, actually transitioning people onto Zoom and to basically learn how to use Zoom and participate, that was a little bit harder for us, but we were still able to do it. Our class has been on Zoom since March, and we continue to Zoom till the end of this school year. During that time, we were able to do CASAS assessments. Some people went and took their CASAS placement tests in the parking lot. Later in the school year, I was able to give a placement test one-on-one remotely. I've also been giving CASAS tests, the CIT remotely, and just very recently, I started giving the CASAS citizenship listening test remotely. So I see there's some information in the chat. Okay, thank you so much. If you could put your name and your school in the chat, I would appreciate this. Also, if anybody needs to unmute and share any burning questions they have before we begin, I would really appreciate that. So let's check it real quickly. Okay. I will continue on. North Orange Continuing Ed has some really great material related to COAPs. Hopefully I will be able to get them to chime in and to talk about COAPs. So the next one, this is what we're going to do today. The participants will understand that the CASAS assessment, citizenship assessments not only add instructional rigor, but facilitate the successful acquisition of language skills needed to successfully pass the USCIS naturalization interview. This is the content we're going to be talking about today. We will be talking a little bit about WIOA funding and pay points, and I'm not very strong on that, so please, if anybody would like to chime in on about the pay points from CASAS. I'm going to be talking where I can really dive deeply is USCIS citizenship interview and more. So I'm going to be talking about the various components of the citizenship interview. I'm going to talk about how the N400 and the CASAS life work reading skills match up. I will be talking, the heart of this presentation is the CASAS citizenship assessments. We will be talking about how the CASAS EL Civics COAPs support the citizenship interview. And then we will talk about resources for the CASAS Civics and Citizenship Assessment Administration, and then practice for the CASAS Civics and Citizenship Assessments. Again, this presentation, it has been uploaded to WOBA, and you can download it at your leisure. Let me take a quick peek at the chat. Okay, no questions. Okay, let us proceed. So we're going to talk about accountability and assessments. So we're talking about data collection key guidelines. Of course, you basically are, you need to have a pre-test, a post-test. We have the CASAS CIT, which is the citizenship interview test, and the government history test, which is basically the civics listening test, where the students are basically answering questions very similar to the questions that they have on the USCIS civics test. So again, we have to take a pre-test and post-test, and you gain points if your students also add on the citizenship test and the government and history listening test. Is there any further questions about this or any further comments about this one? Okay. I'm going to get a little bit deeper into the overview of the USCIS citizenship interview, the reading and writing tests. And here what we talk about, excuse me, I'm going to step back. When we talk about the civics test, you need to correctly answer 6 out of the 10 USCIS civics questions. You need to for the reading test, you need to correctly read 1 out of 3 sentences. With writing, you need to correctly write 1 out of 3 dictated sentences. And the speaking listening test is based on the USCIS N400 application for naturalization. The applicant is responding to approximately 20 to 70 commands. And I would say nowadays it's even longer, and it basically increases or decreases according to the applicant's responses on the N400. So for instance, if they if their application is based on marriage, they're going to ask more questions about the marriage. When we take a look at one of the first tests, we're going to talk about the reading and writing for USCIS. They have 2 complementary vocabulary lists. They do not perfectly match up. So for instance, the applicant may be able to, may be asked to read a sentence about Abraham Lincoln. So Abraham Lincoln was the president during the Civil War, but when they actually take the dictation, they are only going to be required to write Lincoln. They will not be required to write the word Abraham. Also, with the reading and writing test, the samples that they're given to read, they are always questions. And some people naturally assume that these are questions taken from the USCIS civics and history test. They are not. It's a separate question bank. There is no official list of the reading sentences and dictation sentences. There are official lists for the vocabulary. However, through a lot of research and just practice over the past 10 years, you can say that there's about 40 to 50 questions and dictation sentences that they use. As you can see that the reading vocabulary and the writing vocabulary is complementary. And my students always ask me, how many words can I misspell? And it's kind of like, you're supposed to get them all right, okay? Particularly the more important words related to civics and history. So if you misspell Washington, yeah, that's a big deal, okay? If you happen to misspell you might get a little bit confused and put a Z in front of an S. That's not going to be as serious, but they want to make sure that you get the civics content, because again, you're demonstrating the mastery of the USCIS curriculum. Okay. If we're talking about the civics questions, again, this is basically the first part of the civics test. Oh, excuse me, let me step back. Forgot to, The reading and writing a test, I really see this as being supported by the CASAS 951 and 952 test. And I will be talking a little bit more about this more directly, but basically it's probably a level B test where the students are shown things related to the to a civics test. So for instance, they might see an image of a quarter and they might be asked who is on the quarter. And then they would have Washington is on the quarter. This is the kind of thing that they would be seeing when they're doing the reading and the dictation questions. So a lot of those things that are on these two tests can actually be extracted and be used as dictation. Or you could say that when our students take this test, they're going to see things that they will be familiar with by having studied and practiced their reading and writing vocabulary. Let's go on to the civics test. Now, this is directly assessed by the CASAS 965 and 966 test. However, the questions on that test are a little bit different. I'll talk about that in a minute. One of the big improvements that I've seen with citizenship is they're working for constant improvement on their materials. When they delivered the 100 questions in 2008, they delivered them in an organized fashion. So they put together the questions related to American democracy or the system or the responsibilities. They put them together, they grouped them together, which really helped the teachers developing and delivering curriculum to their students. So again, here you're going to hear a lot of, starts out with some big scary words initially for our students about Constitution or Declaration of Independence. Again, we're moving on to the systems of government, and it really helps that we have a lot of new stuff in the news about the different branches interacting with each other. And I think really the heart of this, the citizens or the civics test from USCIS is this civic participation, because we are trying to move our students from being applicants and being students to active participants in the American civic culture. We're moving on, and we're going to be talking, we have the American history. There's a lot of vocabulary related to names, names and dates, and it's really interesting when you're teaching this stuff. If you're talking about things related to names, you always basically reflect back on this applicant's or the student's N400. If you're talking about the first and last name of George Washington, you talk about the student's first and last name. When you talk about names, when you talk about dates, you talk about the dates relative to the applicant's N400. When you're talking about more recent American history, you might be able to relate it to history from their home countries or from their, especially when talking about immigration to the United States. Some students came in generations of families. So maybe the grandfather came and then started petitioning for more people to come through. So I usually have my students put up timelines relative, especially to this last part, 78 to 87, and see how their family fits in, because we're always trying to see the students trying to fit them into the N4, to the USCIS curriculum. Again, we have a lot of things about geography, symbols, and holidays, and that's really interesting to see. You see questions like almost, you do not see exactly the questions from the USCIS test on the 965 and 966. They might be worded slightly different, but again, the 965 and 966 very much directly support the teaching of the USCIS 100 questions. Let's talk about the N400 application for naturalization. Again, it's the N400 application for naturalization is divided into 18 parts. We usually concentrate on the first 12, particularly the additional information when we're talking about moral character and attachment to the Constitution. However, when we're talking about how it relates to the cost to how the CASAS tests support this, particularly when we dig into the life work series, especially in the questions related to jobs and related to education, you really could see that a lot of these questions that appear on our life work series are also appear on the N400 the N400 sections. Furthermore, the CASAS CIT, or the citizenship interview test, directly addresses these questions not only in the personal information sections, but also gets into the Part 12 section related to the moral character and also the attachment to the Constitution. So the CIT is really directly tries to replicate the experience that the student is going to have in that N400 section of the citizenship interview. I know the census is over, but I'm still included this information about the census. I think CASAS did an outstanding job trying to get census education out there to our students. Of course, there was a lot of controversy about related to citizenship and eligibility. I still think that we need to still talk about census in our classrooms for several reasons. First of all, there is the American, oh, okay, great, now I forgot it. The American Life Survey that is put out about from the USCIS, no, sorry, from the Census Bureau, directed to certain parts of the United States between the biannual census, and they're trying to gather more information about the population to directly match up needs related to the infrastructure. So we still need to think about the census, not only because of the American Life Survey, but also because we need to think about it in reference to apportionment. So we are, California lost a representative. Texas, I believe, gained 2 representatives. So we need to talk about the census and apportionment, not only in terms of political power, but in terms of representation, in terms of voting rights. So again, census related to the N400 is very important. And later I'm going to refer to the CASAS co-ops that talked about census education. Let's move on to life work reading series. And this is a typical student in front of our school that's like, oh yes, I need a citizenship class. So they come in, they know they want to be a citizen, but what happens, they're immediately put into they're immediately told that you're going to be taking a CASAS test, and they're like, well, why do I have to do this? I want to study citizenship. I don't want to study things related to English and ESL. So and that's been very traumatic for some students. But I always say that you're going to be learning a lot of English in in the citizenship class. You're going to be speaking a lot. It's not about grammar, but we're going to be we need to get a baseline of where your English is now, so you can see how much English that you will learn during this citizenship test. And if they think about it and they say, I just want to learn citizenship. And I go, you're gonna not only gonna learn, and you're gonna learn it enough English, you're gonna learn enough English, not only to pass your test, but the citizenship test, they're going to be asking a lot of questions about life and work and applications and all those kind of things. You're going to be using that information to fill out rental applications, to fill out applications for job, to basically answer interview questions during medical appointments, those kind of things. So these skills that you're going to be learning in the citizenship class are going to be transferable. And the English that you learn in the citizenship classroom is also transferable to other parts of your life too. So taking the CASAS pre and post test is going to be able to see how far that you grow in the process. So
Jennifer, sorry,
yes.
Patricia Davis had a quick question in the chat.
Yes, please.
She asked, I believe she's referring to your previous slides. What do the numbers and plus sign indicate?
Are you talking about the census one?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So, well. I was simply the plus signs. I was simply trying to make a distinction. It was really difficult when I was putting like, this is part 1 of the N400 part 2. There's nothing plus about it. I was trying to make simply a distinction between this part and this part. It was only for visibility, and I know the visibility is not good that with this side. But here I'm trying to match up like that. For instance, the N400 is going to ask you about eligibility. And this was a rejected question of the census. Again, when we go to part 2, we're going to, from the N400, this is going to be asking questions related to, this is the first question on the census. So that's what I was trying to do. Nothing in there. The plus is not meaningful. I'm sorry about that. Would you like to respond to that orally? Are you okay with that?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, great. So when you're talking about the CASAS citizenship interpretations, are you talking about the CIT?
I'm sorry, I'm talking about when they take the test and they're given a score, like after they're done, it's like a 218 or a 220 or 199. Where can I, I'm sorry, I'm new to citizenship.
Sure.
And so our district has not been able to find like the CASAS, when they do the reading and the math, it says low level, intermediate. They cannot find the manual that shows what a 218 means or what does a 199 mean after we've printed their score when they've taken the citizenship test.
Well, are you talking about the citizenship test, the reading, listening? Are you talking about the listening test, or are you talking about the speaking test?
CASAS, the test, all of it. The CASAS citizenship test, when they go in and they take the test, when you set them up for the pre and post test.
Okay, so what I think might be happening in your school district, okay, is that when is it on a computer?
Yes.
Okay, so when they put things on the computer, they basically say, okay, for you citizenship students, you're gonna need to take, we're gonna say that you're gonna need to take a pre and post test, and they're usually using the pre and post test from the Life Work series. And when they take the Life Work series, then that's where they're coming out with the 218 and everything like that. When they're taking the list, as opposed to the one for the listening test and the other one for the speaking test. And is Portia on here? Portia?
Yes, I'm here, Jennifer.
Would you like, can you respond to that a little bit better?
So yeah, I'm going to post a link in the chat box, and that is one of the score level descriptor charts. I'm not sure if that will help you.
That'll be perfect, because I only have one for the math and reading, nothing to do with the citizenship, but we couldn't find one for the citizenship one.
The scale scores for the citizenship are the same as the scale scores for the other tests. So a 206 on a citizenship test is the same as a 206 in a life and work reading test. They're all scaled the same.
Even for like the math And so the general math and the general reading CASAS tests.
If you can access the document that I posted for you, I think that'll answer a lot of those questions for you.
Thank you so much.
It's
This will
got, it's
be
got
so
it divided
helpful.
by reading, math, and other skills.
Yes.
If we
Okay,
have
fabulous. Thank you so much.
We have enough time. We'll come back and take a look at that
Oh,
at the very end. Okay.
Yes, this is very helpful. Thank you
Okay,
so
great.
much. Thank you.
Okay. So again, they're placed in the test. Most of our citizenship classes are multi-level classes. For a while, they were saying that with only intermediate advanced students could come into the citizenship test. We lowered that to intermediate, low intermediate, or so that would be ESL3. However, we're finding that students who basically get the score of 205 and above, or 206 and above, do okay in the citizenship class. They might need to be in the citizenship classes a little bit longer, but they also make some really good gains in the class. Again, this is based on the paper test from 2008, but I was trying to match up some of the question numbers with the actual from the different various tests with the sections about job, school, and money. So we were saying that, hey, there's a lot of questions again that appear on these CASAS tests that also relate directly to what is being asked on the during the USCIS interview. For example, here's one of the lowest level questions, the 27 reading test, and you'll see something that looks like a signature. Where do you see signature? Well, you see signature if you don't sign your name in the at the end of I think part 13 or part 12 or part 13, they will reject your N400 application. So that's a really useful way to think about the signature, that this is a question on a very low level CASAS test. You're going to see it again when you're applying for your citizenship. And it's very important because think about what a signature represents. It means that you are agreed to everything that's on this application is truthful, and that you will abide by US laws. Also, this messy picture over here, and this is actually a quill pen. And every year we celebrate Constitution Day on September 17th. So for the first 3 weeks of school, we are learning about the Constitution, and also we're developing classroom rules. And on September the 17th, we put out tables, put up big pictures of the Constitution, and gather together and basically sign the Constitution. And basically we were affirming that we're agreeing to live by the rules. So mostly in our school, you can see a lot of Vietnamese names, but we encourage people to sign in various ways. So it's always interesting to see the signing of this. Here's a higher level question from the 185 R. There's a question, basically advertising fingerprints and fingerprinting. And of course, fingerprinting is always a really, really big deal when the students get their fingerprinting letter. So this is my student who did get her fingerprinting letter. And in fact, I was administering a CASAS paper test. Students were separated out in the classroom with their paper books and their sheets. And as I was walking around and basically monitoring the test, I got an elbow in my side. And it was because the student had just gotten her fingerprint notice. So she basically jumped up and she started waving this fingerprint notice around, of course, totally disrupting the test. But it really actually inspired the students, because here is something that they're taking in the test, and it's now basically jumped out and basically has manifested in her own life. So it was really exciting for the student, and also it basically parallels the students' lives and basically are saying, hey, this stuff that's happening is really going to happen, is really going to become real. I would like to move on to more directly talk about the CASAS citizenship assessments. And so here my students probably, I don't think they're taking an assessment right there. That's too close together for them. Plus there's textbooks on there. But the first one I want to talk about is the 951, the 952R. These are targeted to lower level ESL students. And they're talking about reading comprehension in a citizenship context. I really like this test. I'm not exactly sure the pay points that can be given in this. But for example, they have questions like this. So they have a very simple picture, and then they ask about what is this. So they're actually asking to identify this object. And then students could think about, well, this is George Washington. No, wait a minute, what money is on, what coin is George Washington on? So there's a lot of content on here. Again, United States of America. We have a lot of practice about talking about liberty, freedom, independence. We talk about religious freedom when we talk about In God We Trust. And of course, we always are we have practiced the quarter and the dollar. So anyway, okay, when we're talking about the government listening test, this superseded the 963 and the 1964. It's a multiple choice listening test, and the students listen to 30 recorded questions. The questions are repeated twice, and I think that's really important because a lot of students, especially if they've been doing citizenship a long time, the interviewer opens their mouth, they start asking the question, they immediately answer the question before the question ends. You gotta listen to the whole question. And they are based, like I would say 95% on the new questions. Here's an example. So they'll see the answers, but they have to listen to the question. And this one's a pretty easy one to guess. Students can guess at, well, this is probably red, white, and blue because they're asking the colors of the flag. But here, you're not going to be sure what they're going to ask about. They could be asking about who's the second president, or who wrote the Declaration of Independence, or who was the first president, or who wrote who helped write the Federalist Papers. So again, even though it's a very interesting test, the students could absolutely, if they could take one test, my students probably would try to take this like at least every week. It would be interesting if there was a variety of tests, or more variety of people speaking, like maybe go between male and female during it, but still a very, very valuable test, and the students feel very affirmed when they take this. Now, I was able to, I was wondering if anybody gave this test remotely, because recently CASAS developed a PDF that progresses remotely. So the PDF shows these answers and the student is able to answer the questions. Can anybody put in the chat if they administered this remotely? Okay. So I was able to administer this test remotely to my students. I think I got about 15 remote tests in. The only problem, oh, let's see, did we get one person who said yes? Okay, Kim Bixel, yes, hello, Kim. Can you unmute and talk a little bit about your experience?
Hello.
Hi, Kim.
Hi. It was
Kim, can you introduce yourself? What you in your school?
Yes, I'm from Turlock Adult School in Central California, and I teach a citizenship class, and I'm also a paraprofessional, so I administer the the CASAS tests in the morning, and I teach
Right.
citizenship at night. So anyway, I did have to do a couple remote tests because we actually had a couple students who were COVID positive. And by the grace of God, it worked. I only had to do it a couple times. So that was the problem, is that I didn't do it every single day, but I did do it and it worked and it was awesome.
Yeah, whoever developed that PowerPoint has mad PowerPoint skills. So the
Right.
PowerPoint basically progresses on its own, very clear sound. The problem is that the students who are taking it, most of the students were very good about writing out their answers very cleanly, and you could read the A, B, C, and D. The problem that I had was that when I turned in, so I would take this, the students would take pictures of their answer sheets, send it in to me. I would bubble their answers into a Scantron, give it to the office, and they said, hey, we don't have Scantron sheets. How do we basically record this? So that was initially the only hiccup that I basically had was that I could not correct the test. I had to turn it over to my administration, who had to, I guess they basically entered it manually and received the question like that. So
Jennifer?
yes, please. Can you?
This is Portia.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so for that test, you don't have to submit each answer. You can score the sheet and then do it like an EL Civics test, do a score override and enter 999 for pass and 000 for fail.
Well, that's what I saw in the answers, right? I said, hey, you have to do is submit the 999, right? And my administration said, no, you need to basically record these answers. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll bubble everything in. So anyway, the important things, the tests were recorded, and the administration of the tests, the students went really smoothly. And that's what I was really, really happy about. So anyway, and the students, the students actually really enjoy the test. So anyway, I think the hiccup was on the back end. The hiccup was definitely not on the front end of this test. So anyway, Kim, how many tests do you think you administered? Can you say, Kim?
Over remotely, how many tests did I administer remotely?
Yes.
Oh, only maybe 4 or 5.
Okay,
but
4
we
or 5.
did it remotely on the computer. I took over their computer and they were answering on the computer.
Okay. So that's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was basically using my computer. I was in a Zoom session. I started the PowerPoint and the students were watching the PowerPoint and they were in the Zoom session. They were writing their answers down and then they sent it in. And so I have some really cute pictures of people's perfect papers of how they answered the questions. So that was really, really good. So anyway, cannot recommend this experience enough. Any other questions or any other comments, please? Good job on that test. Now I want to talk about the CIT test. So it is a standardized assessment. It basically helps it to see if the individual is ready to pass the USCI naturalization test. The target population is high beginning to advanced ESL students, and some advanced ESL students do have problems with this test, especially when it comes to the definitions later on. And I meant to update that should be 2021 to 2020 to 2021, and I have that later on. Again, we are talking, there's multiple competencies that are assessed during this, many grammar structures and verb tenses, and they basically assess the application for naturalization vocabulary. There is training required to administer the test, and most of the time you think, oh my God, another training. I really like the training because it basically adds rigor to my own administration of the test, because a lot of times you think, oh, I know the student, I know what they mean. But that's not gonna, my relationship with the student is not gonna help them pass the interview with a student that they don't, with an administrator that they don't know. So that's gonna be really super, super important for them, for you to basically up your game and to add rigor to your assessment is gonna help the student in the long run. The interview is approximately, I would say about 15 minutes, and it follows the basic USCIS interview. This is talking about the training. I would say that the core of the training for me, which is delivered on the computer, is taking a look at the anchors and really digging into the scoring exercises. So I really spend a lot of time with that. I really want to talk about the scoring guidelines. We're talking about the clarity of the entire response. So sometimes they start off clear and then they start talking so much that they basically obfuscate the answer. So this is something really important, a really good soft skill when you go to the interview. You don't want to just give one word answers to the point where it seems rude, but you want to give answers in a complete way, but you want to basically pare it down to exactly what the USCIS officer needs to know. So the answer should be understandable, and there shouldn't be any debate about the meaning. So if I ask them what is their birthday and they say 5/6/87, is it June the 6th or is it, wait a minute, yeah, is it June 5th or is it May the 6th? So I have to answer questions about that. So again, this is really good practice, and it's just kind of like, we want to basically put the students in the best possible way to respond to these questions. We want to talk about that the responses are according to the average American, not a trained ESL professional. So it's kind of like, I'm really good at picking up accents, but it's kind of like we need to, and figuring out, unwrapping grammar knots and things like that. That's easy for me to do. But for some Americans and USCIS officers, even though they've had a lot of training, they're not ESL professionals. So we basically want to see what would a normal American, how would they be able to understand these responses? Is the student providing enough information to make sure that the information that they deliver is clear? We have the scoring responses: 0 for no response or absolutely incorrect. Score 1 is partial information, and score 2 that's actually absolutely clear. Here's there's 2 examples. So sometimes in the first part of the interview, they'll ask you a simple question, like, for instance, what is your home address? And here that they want you to provide the zip code. This is going to be very important. And then in the third part of the test, they're going to ask you a 2-part question, where have you ever sold or smuggled illegal drugs? Yes or no. And what are illegal drugs? And they want you to provide examples of those illegal drugs. So alcohol is absolutely incorrect. And I'm surprised a lot of my students do actually, when I ask them what are illegal drugs, they say alcohol. So that's interesting to hear. You have to be careful about a couple things. It doesn't measure the knowledge of US civics. That's what you're using the listening test for. The vocabulary is based on the pre-2014 N400 application of naturalization. So it doesn't include the new stuff, the questions about war crimes. And in a way that's good, because some of those questions could be really traumatizing. So I could see the value about not including some of those questions. We want to basically replicate or model of what happens during a USCIS interview. We don't want to traumatize our students. And it does detour slightly from the N400 question sequence. There's interruptions or distractions. For instance, there's a question about education, which is not on during education in somebody's home country, which doesn't happen during a USCIS interview normally, doesn't happen normally. Or they ask questions in the middle of there about what do you miss about your home country? Normally those questions happen at the very beginning. And then there's use about colloquial, there's uses of colloquial English, like questions like, how do you make your living? I hear questions like that in the middle of the country. Californians usually don't say, how do you make your living? Because most people would say, I live in San Jose, or, so it's really interesting to see how the students navigate in those situations. But the benefit, even though there's warnings, there's also benefits, because it always refocuses the CIT refocuses the students' education on the N400 application, because a lot of our students, when you say to them it's time to get ready for your citizenship test, they're thinking you're talking about the civics test, and it's like, no, 90% of the interview is based on the N400 application. There are, even though that there's the vocabulary is based on the old 10-page pre-2014 N400, the students still must be able to explain common N400 Part 12 terms, such as deportation, or alcoholic, or those kind of things. It detours slightly from the N400 question sequence, but again, they're in a safe space to practice interruptions or distractions. So that's really, really important for students, because a lot of times if you're out in public and you're distracted, or there's a detour, it could have some serious consequences. So again, if you're in a CIT test, you're in a safe place where you're practicing how to negotiate that. And uses of colloquial English that you're gonna find in interviews. And furthermore, that there's gonna be connections to this to job interviews, medical interviews, parent-teacher conferences, etc. I wanted just to stop for a second, possibly take a stretch. So everybody stretch. And I want to see if anybody did administer the CIT remotely. Did anybody do that? So if you could shout that out, perhaps unmute your mic and talk about administering the CIT remotely. Kim, did you? Yeah, Kim, did you? Okay, so what happened when you administered the CIT remotely?
Okay, so since I'm the instructor, I wasn't allowed to give the interviews. We had a couple people who were trained for that. Mm-hmm. And so Jane was the person who did that, and she did it remotely, and they did fine, because I think the semester spent on Zoom helped keep them comfortable on the computer. So it wasn't something super new.
Okay.
So,
do you know if she used the fillable PDF, or did she have one of the booklets to do?
She had a binder that she had.
She had a binder?
Yeah, with all her papers in it. With she wouldn't show them to me because it's super confidential. But she gave me an idea what, like if they spoke one word of Spanish, they automatically got a 0. That was a big deal to train my students to not even say cocaína like that, which do a lot. So
yeah, that's really interesting. When we were shut down, I think it was March the 14th, and we're basically leaving the building, I grabbed a whole packet of the CIT tests. So I brought them home. I was continuing to administer the test through Zoom. In I think June 2020, CASAS released a fillable PDF, which
Okay.
was really super nice. So that was great for people who did not have access to those paper tests, but we're still able to administer the CIT. Now, when I used, I only did the fillable PDF a couple of times because I had the whole the packet of papers. But my experience of using the fillable PDF, it was good for me to have the fillable PDF on an iPad and mark that as the student, as I was talking to the student on another device. So now some people I know switched back and forth. They use one computer and switched back and forth. I thought that was a little bit awkward. It's doable, but it's a little bit awkward. I think it's better to use two devices on that.
Absolutely.
Anybody else have want to say anything? Jump in about that.
Jennifer, this is Portia.
Yeah.
And
Thank
the
you.
other alternative is to print the PDF and just mark it as you're going along.
Yeah. I thought it was. I always save the PDF or quote print it as a PDF, and that's what I would send into my administration. So, and they liked it because it was so much neater when they get a PDF, when they would get a paper from me. First of all, there would be all sorts of writing in there because I'm writing comments about the students' responses. So they appreciated the neatness and the cleanliness of the PDF. Anyway, okay.
So Jennifer,
Yes.
one question.
Please.
Aren't you the citizenship instructor?
Yes, I am the citizenship instructor.
And you also administered the practice interview?
Yeah. I can't-
My principal wouldn't let the instructor do it. She wouldn't let me. It had to be somebody else.
I don't know what to say about your.
So that's just a choice, or is it?
Jennifer, I can answer that.
Yes, please.
So it's not a requirement of CASAS. That would be a requirement. That would be your school's decision. However, whoever is offering the test must be certified. So if the teacher's not certified, the teacher can't offer it.
Yeah, the person was certified.
Yeah.
Wouldn't
So they
let me
can.
do
It's
it.
probably better for somebody else to do it, but there's no rule. There's no CASAS rule saying the teacher can't offer that test.
It made them a little more nervous. They were more comfortable with me. So it was good that it was somebody that they didn't know, and they didn't know the way she spoke English. So it was a good experience.
I think it's probably better for the students, and some programs have a lot of volunteers. In our school, we have a super small school. I think we don't have access to those volunteers. So, but the thing is that the more that they speak with other people, the better they're going to have a result they're going to have during their interview. So.
But the person who administered the test, she got paid.
Yeah, of course.
Like it was an extra thing for her.
Yeah, my principal doesn't pay me, so she just pays me for she pays me to teach, not to look good. She pays me to teach. Okay. Now how would she get the CIT certification again? Portia would be.
I'm gonna put a link in the chat box. So it
Okay,
just
great.
needs to be ordered from CASAS, and there's no charge to WIOA 2 agencies.
No.
I would wait until after July 1st because you'll get a whole nother year of certification as opposed to if you were to do it today.
Yeah, after July 1st. Okay, let's continue on. How am I doing on time? Oh, wow, only half an hour left. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little about, am I pronouncing this correctly, COAPS, in the citizenship interview?
Yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
good. So we're talking about the COAPS, the additional assessment plans. Our students, our schools do 3 a year. Some people do 6 every year. Some people are doing this. It's connecting literacy to the lives of the learners. it enables them to practice community projects. So very good, where they're organized into, I thought there was 8 different co-ops. The biggest one here is the new ones related to transition, where you're talking about digital literacy, bridges to college training, etc. So those are the 70 series. My favorite, of course, are the ones related to the government and the law. And here we're talking about the one that is probably closest related to the citizenship experience is the EL Civics Objective 40. And this is a really important link here that basically gives you a correlation to instructional materials for EL Civics. So this is pretty updated. I was pretty happy with it. But let's see. If I finish early, I'm going to come back to show this to you. So it basically talks about different textbooks that will link up to this. So the focus areas of the Objective 40 is, our COAPS 40 is naturalization, US history, civic engagement, and government. And they talk about the different aspects that you could be discussing: historical events, describing the flag, identifying the branches of American government, which is really helpful about as we try to understand what's happening with the news, identifying and then identifying the different levels of the American government. So seeing what there's a difference between national government, state government, and local government, and talking more about history and civics. So again, here's some more information about that. And again, the highlight of this is basically going through mock interviews. So, and practicing a dictation. And then here, the students are encouraged to engage in writing a letter or article relating to the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. So that's really helpful, especially I found these helpful during Adult Schools Week. Our students would write letters to the state legislator supporting adult education. So that was interesting. Again, when you're talking about the mock interviews, the students are asking the level appropriate questions from taken from the USCIS interviews, and that they're answering questions related to the civics questions. However, this it's easy for, excuse me, let me step back. Go back to N4 COAPS 40. It's easy in my area of San Jose. We have a very high population of Vietnamese in our district. Most of the students have been able to come over as refugees or legal immigrants. There are other parts of San Jose, if you basically said, hey, we're going to do COAPS 40, it could potentially alienate the students because they have many students who are there that are undocumented. For that, I would basically say that it would be really good to take a look at COAPS 19, which is about immigrant rights. And it talks about how to access services that basically help protect immigrants' rights, whether they're documented or undocumented. And they basically learn about, during this process, not only do they learn about the accessing the services, but they also understand what their rights are in the United States. And so we're taking a look at adapted texts and about citizens' naturalization and rights and responsibilities. A lot of times I look at things from the American Civil Liberties Union that basically takes information from the Bill of Rights or now I'm going to blank on that. There's a lot of, please check in my PDF of that I included, which I uploaded in Wahova, which about resources. So there's a lot of information in there about PDFs from the different immigrant rights communities that basically talk about how students can protect their rights, especially I'm thinking about the red cards in different languages. So we're talking about accessing those agencies. And again, I'm going to be basically talking about COAPS 54, because even though the census is over, we still needed to learn how to respond to that information. And we do need to be ready for the American Life Survey that does come out, especially to our larger communities, that basically is a follow-up to the census. And those are approximately, that survey is approximately 30 questions that basically talk about more about economic information. They do ask about citizenship or legal status. They talk about how many people live in homes. And a lot of times this is basically related back to infrastructure, the building of hospitals, schools, and even grocery stores. So this is going to be it's going to be interesting to see. They ask about languages. They're trying to see how they can realign services to meet a changing community. So this is going to be really interesting that we could take the information that was in COAPS 54 and basically prep up our students to respond to deeper surveys from the Census Bureau, and also respond to what happens during apportionment in our state and local legislatures. Okay, let me see. Again, that was from the census. And yes, if we take a look, I'm going to shout out to the census.gov. Not only do they have a really great website, but they also have a really great YouTube channel. So lots of really, really good lesson plans that are adaptable for adult education, particularly related to finances and things that tap into numeracy. And our students have had some, many of our students have had some really sophisticated education in mathematics. And this is something that they could basically easily adapt into to learning, acquiring more English. So tapping into some of these lesson plans, talking about business, talking about places to live is going to be really, really important because, for instance, in our part of California, we have seen an exodus of Texas, and then we've also seen people come back from Texas. Why? Because even though the property is really, really cheap there, the living there and the costs were really, really expensive. So it was really interesting to go back and forth to see. So taking a look at some of these maps and taking a look at some of these numeric information is really going to be interesting, applying it in our adult education classrooms. I want to talk about further resources for administering CASAS civics and citizenship assessments. And this was a really, yay, Portia, do you want to talk about your own presentation?
Yes, at 11:45, I have an EL Civics Basics Citizenship Preparation session. And I'm going to go through all of the nuts and bolts for setting up and running a citizenship preparation program under WIOA 2. And it will include certification for the CIT, remote testing, and how to maximize California payment points under citizenship.
So that's really super great. And so I think one of the smartest things, I really love EL Civics conferences. I love going to different parts of California, meeting the different teachers, but they basically, this year we had an unconference where we basically, teachers submitted and CASAS staff submitted different videos. So we basically recorded our presentations and we uploaded them to into the playlist, which is available on YouTube. And so so take a look at the CASAS systems assessments. So this was really, really great. Good playlist. Also, I mentioned the FAQs. I want to point out 3 really important FAQs. So here in number 14, they talk about the CIT remote testing and how you would go about that. So particular information about the fillable PDF and what you would have to do to set that up. I want to talk in here about distance learning and EL civics. So this is number 15. And the question is, how do I designate a class that's both EL civics and distance learning? Do I need to designate it both as EL civics and distance learning, or just one or the other? So that's a question that I think Portia is going to be referring to at 11:45. And this one is about number 16. I have read this so many times. It's still very difficult for me to articulate this, but this one is 16. How do I set up a class to have instruction in both civic participation and citizenship preparation, or civic participation and integrated EL civics? So, Portia, are you going to be talking about this later at 11?
I will go in depth into that in particular, yes.
Okay,
It's a
I'm going
big
to try
question. I get it a lot. Yes, I will.
try to, you know, especially when I hear about EL, this is the question that I have related to this. It's like, I know of some what do I want to say? Adult schools that they don't have a citizenship class, but all of a sudden they're saying, okay, everybody's gonna do a COAPS 40, and now we're gonna go get a whole bunch of pay points because we're gonna give everybody the CIT test and everybody the listening test. And I'm saying, wow, that's so illegal because you're not a citizenship test. And they're saying, yes, it is legal. So I'm like, how is that able to do that? So hopefully I could get an answer in your workshop. So
I will sort all of that out for you, Jennifer.
thank you so much. Because I don't want to say, he's like, I'm going to call the CASAS police.
CASAS police.
That's not going to be helpful. Okay. So anyway, I love the quick search has been updated. So this one, they were basically able to add some more information and some updated information related to the citizenship in some of the textbooks. So please take a look at that, because a lot of times if you're taking a look at ventures or future, whatever the case may be, embedded in those textbooks are specific chapters related to not only the specific COAPs, but related to things on the citizenship test. So for instance, invariably we have people with arrests. Well, of course they have chapters in ventures and future about how to talk to the police. And that's especially important, especially in the last couple of years. So again, please take a look at the quick search. It has been updated. Does anybody want to say anything about the quick search? Anybody use the quick search? Again, you could take a look at it related to the different tests. I really like to look at it at from the competencies. I feel like I pulled the best information. And plus you can basically update these publications, the publication dates. Finally, we're going to get down to CASAS civics and citizenship assessments. So these are things that can support it. Of course, we have Minnesota Literacy, and they have a really great PDF that you can download that has 70 pages. Basically, they've taken the questions from the N400 and they basically said what the appropriate answer is, and the student, they have a checklist. Did the student answer appropriately or not answer appropriately? This is very much like the concept that they're using on the CIT, where CIT has a little bit more, has a larger range of answers, plus they have the certification. But again, if you give your student this in different sections, again, this will help prep up your student not only for the CIT, but for the citizenship test as well. And again, support Minnesota Literacy. They do awesome work. this is a really very old, I think this might be 12 years old, from City College of San Francisco. They did maybe about 60 videos about the best, okay, and worst citizenship interview strategies. And the students, most of these videos are fairly short, but they love taking a look at the soft skills that the students bring to the interviews. So how some people are maintaining eye contact, some people are not maintaining eye contact. Some people run on in their answers. Whatever the case may be, the students love taking a look at this and critiquing the interviews themselves. So this is really, really helpful. And again, it encourages a lot of language production when we're watching these videos, and especially when we watch them in groups, and then students report back on that. Of course, we know USA Learns. USA Learns has a whole section in there about N400 practice. And a lot of, if there is a problem with USA Learns, it is because it is so complete. So one of the ways, and so some students get bogged down when they're going through this application. So one of the ways around it is that I basically model USA Learns in my own classrooms. I use part 1 as warm-ups for my students. So I'm projecting it on, and I only do maybe 10 minutes at the most together. I get a little bit further into the N400 section. Again, we're doing it together as a class. And then eventually we're able to go, when it's getting into more the part 12, the marriage section, because some people have problematic relationships or they've had problematic living situations. This is where the stories become a little bit more engaging. There's a little bit more problems. It's just not dry vocabulary. And plus the pictures are beautiful. This is where the students, you've gotten the students to buy in this far. Now, if you let them loose in the computer lab and say, start with this N400 section about your marriage or your children, that's where they're going to get through the rest of the program. So you need to get them over that hump about talking about the legal stuff for them to get through, and they're going to learn a lot of vocabulary and able to practice their pronunciation, everything like that. So once they get through that, they're going to be able to go on to the civics section, or you can pair up some of the sections with the civics and some of the sections with the N400, so they get a dual track going on there. So again, USA Learns. No, not now. Okay, let me go on. Unfortunately, I just dropped out of my own presentation. 1 second, please. Present. Somebody's asking a question. Would you like to, could somebody read me the question while I track to the correct place?
Jennifer, it's Kara. I don't see a question in chat. I just wanted to remind you we've got about 15 minutes left.
Oh, yes, I am almost at the very end of my presentation. Here we get a quick look at it again.
We can see your, we can see the USA Learn slide.
Yeah, I think I'm sharing the wrong thing. New share again. Okay. Okay, there's the US Learn slide. This, are you seeing mix and match citizenship interviews?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so these are two PDFs that I developed. They're both in English and in Spanish, and they have 20 interviews. They start with the simple 10 question interviews, And then they move up to like 25 questions. Basically, the students are acquiring more practice or more vocabulary as they move up the questions. So the reason why I did this is that I'm trying to encapsulate the N400 interview on one piece of paper. And then the other side of the piece of paper, I would put some sort of civics questions. And I would basically hand them out in the classroom. So nobody really has the same paper, or maybe the first time they go through, everybody has the same piece of paper. But later on the semester, people basically had different pieces of paper so they could practice asking and answering questions. And so lower level students could practice with higher level students. How this worked out in the area of Zoom is that I would be picking only maybe 2 N400 practice or different sections of this mix and match citizenship interview. I would put people into breakout rooms, and they would answer 1 or 2 or maybe one of the practice interviews and maybe one of the quizzes. So this has been working a lot. They're usually using this outside the N400 or outside of our Zoom classrooms. They're using it live, but you can again use it. And I've embedded this a lot into a Canvas course that I developed. Finally, I want to thank you from OTAN, and I want to thank you for from CASAS, and please fill out your assessment of how this went. So I'm open for questions. Does anybody have any questions? I could talk a little bit more. I could show you my Canvas course, anything that you would like to do.
Yes, can you share your campus course or what you do?
Canvas course or
Canvas
my
course. I'm sorry, your Canvas
my
course. Yes.
Canvas course. Let me see if that is up. Yes, it is up. Okay, share. So this is, I just submitted this to OTAN, and OTAN is going to be sharing it out. Oh dear. Jennifer. Is any, are people using Canvas in your district? We just got a grant to do that. So log in. Oh, that's interesting. So it looks like one of my courses was removed. Okay, so let me take a look at this one. So this is basically my Canvas course. What I've done is I put it into 16 weeks or 16 modules. And the reason why I put it into 16 modules is because I wanted to basically replicate the weeks in a semester. Of course, sometimes some of these would take longer, sometimes they would take a shorter amount of time. If we take a look at the introduction, usually I have, it follows a pattern where there's an introduction, quick links, and then preparation resources. It's probably better to take a look at this one. So every module is taking a look at, I have interviews, and I'm going to click that. So here is a very, I always have a start off with a video. I have the warm up, so we have a reference to USCIS, the commands and naturalization. We have different scripts that they can follow, and again, these are for mix and match citizenship interview. I have information related to geography, and I've already paired these up. Now, of course, you could tear this apart and say, I don't want to start with geography, I want to start with something else, but you can go ahead and do that. Again, I have all the USCIS lesson plans already embedded in this. I also have warm up related to dictation. Let's continue. The next one is very much like my class. So I basically try to bring together a video where the students are practicing not only the vocabulary that they've learned related to the N400, but they're bringing it together with the civics information that they've learned. So I have not only a video, but usually I have some quizzes, not only for the N400 and for the geography, so people can again mix and match this. And then I always usually have another interview, like a multiple choice test. And then finally in the unit, I usually have some extra information. So either some Cahoots or links to national parks or museums. So if the teacher needs to dig in, pull up some more information, especially if you're like, for instance, Michigan has some really, really great national parks up there. How do you make the information more, civics information more relevant to your students? I love taking a look at our national parks and the history associated with national parks and our museums to get that information. So all that stuff is already loaded into that. And as we can continue on and take a look at this, but it basically always follows this pattern. Again, let me go back to the home. And all of these are pages. So a lot of times people are expecting to see the automatic graded quizzes, and I did, those kind of activities. I didn't load that into my Canvas class because I wanted to really emphasize portability. So I want to show you a more advanced one. So if we're going to go down maybe to this one here, I want to take a look at the regular interview. So this regular interview has maybe about 75 questions in there. You have a video. You have 2 PDFs basically breaking out or digging a little bit deeper into the Part 12 vocabulary. I also have a glossary with some of this vocabulary. I have a presentation and I have the script. Excuse me. I have more videos that talk a little bit more about our civics objective in this course is about civic participation, particularly about voting. So I'm bringing in information not only from USCIS and the preparing the oath from the American History Museum, but I'm also bringing in, so this is integration where I'm basically marrying the N400 vocabulary with an assessment related to voting, because it's just to replicate what's going to be happening during a citizenship interview. And then I have extra information. Again, I'm pulling a lot of information from VOA. I have a couple things in there from StoryCorps and this, I believe. So students can basically practice more about listening, or they can learn a little bit more about the struggle for civil rights and voting, and we have more voting resources. So again, this course gets progressively harder because you're acquiring more citizenship N400 and civic information. But the students, some of my, like I would say, my like they would be ESL2, they were able to follow along in the course because we start out really slow and we gradually pick up information. So they may, a lower level student might be able to need to go through this course maybe twice. And it would be really helped by a student, a teacher adding more practice or activities, say for instance, like they would use maybe Flipgrid, or they would use automatic quizzes and stuff like that. Again, I was really aiming for portability in this one, so we only have pages here. Is there anything else that people would like to talk about before we end?
Jen, I have a question.
Sure.
You used to have a PDF. It was a one-page questions and answers to the 100 questions that you could print out.
Sure.
I can't find it.
You can't find it?
I couldn't find it all semester. I looked for it because it's just one page. They can study
Hey.
off of that.
Kim, I'm so sorry. Do you mind if I can you put your email in the
Sure.
chat?
Sure.
I'll send it to you, okay?
Got it. Ooh, that's awesome. Sure. Thanks.
So sorry about that. Because I know I updated it because of Biden. So maybe that's why I got lost, was because I updated it. Okay, anything else? Okay, well, thank you so much on behalf of CASAS. I really super appreciate all your attention. Again, please check out Portia's workshop at 11:45. I think I will. So anything else that I can help you guys with today? Okay, so thank you so much and just have a really, really awesome day.
Thank you, Jennifer. We
Okay.
appreciate you today. Just a friendly reminder to our attendees, please complete your session evaluation. You can complete this through the polls section on Whova. And thanks so much for joining us, everybody. See you guys in the next session. Take care.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
you guys.
Jennifer.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.